last time. There is a panel on this thing that has few too many holes in it. Finally got the dash out of the car, and honestly it took much longer than I was expecting. A lot of that isn't going back into the car because race car. And with that, we are finally done with painting. Welcome back to episode 3 of the track car build series, where I am rebuilding Yuki, my Miata, from the ground up to make her the ultimate dedicated track weapon. Now last time I did a complete overhaul of the interior of the car, and the time before that I redid the entire underbody, both of which were extremely tedious tasks with a lot of sanding, a lot of sealing, and a lot of painting. Both look brand new now, and I can finally move on to the better part of things, and that's installing new parts onto the car. If you've seen from the previous videos, I have an extreme amount of parts to put on this thing, ranging from chassis bracing, brake components, and all new suspension parts. But that does not mean we are not refreshing some of the old suspension components. There's a lot of stuff that I want to save and just add new bushings to. We're going to be tackling that in this video, along with tearing apart everything that was actually under the dash to give it a quick refresh and get rid of any excess weight. This is Flying Miata's frame rail brace, and they're supposedly going to stiffen up the entire body of the car. Now, originally, cars were made to flex because that saves lives, and unfortunately, that does not help anything in a motorsports scenario. Any sort of movement in the body means a lack of handling and a lack of feel, and that's where these come in. Supposedly, they almost add a 20% increase in rigidity, but we'll see. The Miata's frame rails are already very soft and very easy to fold. So that's where these come in, to the point where you can even jack the entire car up on one of these things. These act like a cradle, so they just essentially slip on from the bottom directly over the existing frame rails. And then I also got ourselves a set of butterfly braces which connect the two sides of these frame rails together, so there's rigidity along this axis, but then once they're installed, there'll be rigidity along this axis as well. So ideally, that should stiffen up the body of the car by a lot. Those frame rail braces were an absolute pain to install. Granted, it was kind of my fault. There was a set of longer bolts and then shorter bolts, and the shorter bolts were supposed to go on the passenger inside of the frame rail. That way there's clearance for the fuel lines and brake lines. Well, unfortunately for me, I did not read that part, so I had to take it all apart again and put the correct bolts in the correct positions. And bolting this all together was also a pain in the butt, since there was no way to hold the top bolt and also the bottom one to tighten everything. So you kind of had to wedge a wrench or a or a breaker bar of some sort into a spot to where it could hold itself, and then you tighten it from the bottom. Earlier, I mentioned something about a butterfly brace, and those are supposed to tie in with the frame rail braces just to add even more rigidity to the car. That way it can't flex this way in a corner or any sort of situation, really. But unfortunately, I don't want to install them right now because I'm eventually going to have to take it off again because they go across the entire car and I need to install transmissions and drivetrain stuff, so no point in putting that in now. Continuing down the chassis bracing aisle, I picked up a set of Paco Motorsports fender braces. Now Miatas, especially NA Miatas, have a ton of chassis flex on the front end of the car, especially the cowl area in front of the windshield. These are supposed to remedy that problem. They are a direct bolt-in into the pre-existing holes that are already on the fender itself, so I don't have to worry about drilling like I did with the frame rail braces. And thank God, because I don't want to drill into my car any more than I have to. I did not read directions again. There was 2 holes on both the left and right side that I needed to bore out just a little bit larger so that the M8 bolts fit, but that is pretty much it. They were a direct bolt in. I had some issues with the door alignment that I just needed to jack up the back end of the door and then tighten everything down. That way it sags a little into the spot that it's supposed to fit. But we got that all aligned and everything works, or looks properly at least. I don't know about working yet. I've been debating about possibly picking up a door bar as well, because I know there's a lot of flex in the middle of the chassis where the passenger area is. And the door bar connects the roll bar to the firewall of the car, and that's supposed to add a lot of rigidity because there's only the bottom half of the car that's connected because it's a convertible. Any other mounting point is gonna solidify the car a lot more. But I kind of want to step into the world of fabricating that. So we'll see if I can come up with some ideas. But in the meantime, I want to go ahead and install the brake lines onto the frame rails and then possibly install the gas tank as well, because the brake lines and fuel lines go over to the access panel area and then the gas tank goes under all of that. And then we can start tearing apart all the drivetrain and suspension parts and start refurbishing them, because that's about where we're at right now. Finally done disassembling the entire drivetrain, and that took so much longer than I expected. There was just a bunch of bolts that connected to other things, and like you had to disassemble it all in a specific order because you couldn't reach certain things, and it was just a pain in the butt. But we're done. It was a long day. Started at 9 and it is currently 10:32 at night. Everything came apart pretty easily. Other than the lower control arms in the rear. These bolts were completely seized to the knuckles. I tried putting it in the press and pushing them out. They would not move. I managed to pull out my big boy impact, and after a long enough time just endlessly impacting it, they finally broke loose. But these things are absolutely mangled. So we're gonna have to be picking up new ones of that. I painted the power plant frame, and the paint didn't really turn out exactly the way that I wanted it to. It was a lot softer than I expected. I'm not too sure what kind of spray paint you can do that's heavier duty other than like endless coats. I started talking with some powder coating people. So they're going to do the lower fronts, the upper and lower in the rears as well, along with the rear subframe. That's going to get all sandblasted and powder coated. So they're going to be essentially brand new parts when I get them back, except the turnaround time is 2 whole weeks. So we got some waiting to do. I'll probably take that time to really clean stuff up. All these bolts that I disassembled, I'll clean them up with the wire wheel or just the ultrasonic cleaner. I don't have any more of the black oxide, so I don't know if I'm gonna turn them black. Maybe I'll order some more and just uniform everything. Otherwise, I'll just hit them with a coat of paint and call it a day. But in the meantime, I'm dropping off all those parts tomorrow at the powder coater, and they all have bushings in them. And rubber bushings don't do too well when it's like a 400-degree oven, so we gotta push all those out. I figured the parts would turn out great, but I wasn't fully prepared for how stunning they would actually turn out. The first piece of the engine swap puzzle, a tubular front subframe from K-Power Industries, allowing me to swap a K24A2 engine into my little Mazda Miata. Now, K-Power Industries themselves don't actually make this part in-house. It comes from V8 Roadster, another popular company for swapping LS3s into Miatas, so you already know their build quality is top-notch. There isn't a whole lot that comes with the subframe itself, other than the motor mounts, which I went with their stiffer polyurethane option since it was going to live its life as a track car. The brackets for the motor mounts are an inch-thick CNC'd aluminum with an indent to allow the polyurethane to seat in and absorb any torque from the engine. Everything is of the highest quality, ensuring a long life of abuse that the car will see ahead. But there was one extra goodie I picked up just to be on the safer side. Due to the K24 engine being a relatively tall engine, K-Power highly recommends a set of subframe spacers for specifically the NA Miata. They seem to be a sheet of metal about 1/4 inch thick to offset the subframe that much more from the body of the car to allow the engine to fit in the engine bay. As exciting as it is to get all those old parts back and even open up new ones, unfortunately none of it can go on the car just yet because there's still some things I have to do. One of those things being I have to tear apart all the knuckles, front and rear. Luckily, I was able to get new wheel hubs and bearings for all 4 corners, so all I have to do is tear that assembly apart and reassemble it like it was before, and we should be good to go. I didn't end up powder coating the knuckles because I figured they're behind all the suspension parts and they're hidden by the wheels, so you're not really gonna ever see it. And it's not really a part that takes too much of abuse, so I'll probably just wire wheel it and give it a quick coat of paint and then call it a day. Now, all those parts that we got back still need to have bushings installed to them, and I'm genuinely surprised with how the rubber bushings came out of the old set. I figured since they're being 30 years old and seen multiple different seasons of winter and other summers and springs, that they would be in rougher shape, but surprisingly, they are really, really good. But we're not using them because we have a full poly bushing set. Everything that was rubber on this car is now going to be replaced with a polyurethane bushing. These things are ridiculously stiff and are not recommended for street use whatsoever because of just the NVH that they produce, but that doesn't matter because, once again, track car. They're a 2-piece design, so honestly they should be a little bit easier to press in than or out versus the old designs. So yeah, let's get to it. So oddly enough, a 21mm socket goes directly into the wheel hub here to where it sits onto the grooved section, and then you could press that out, and then you could follow that up with a 32mm on top of it and push out the wheel bearing. Who would have known?